How the Bible was written. We're going to do that today. Finally, get this off of my plate. It's not my favorite topic. It, I understand it's important, but I don't see it as well, it's not enjoyable. There's so much controversy and so much stuff that everybody talks about. But this is something that, as far as I have seen, nobody talks about. But it is definitely a thing. The one thing, I'm not a biblical anything. I didn't even read this book until after I had learned the timekeeping systems of the 20 days and the 36 decans. I learned the 36 decans first, then I learned the 20 days, and with that kind of comes the trecenas. It was only much later that I decided to take a look, and I didn't even actually look at it at first. I just thought, well, here's another ancient text. Let's look at this. I had looked at many others. I thought, well, look at it. I thought at first the story in Exodus was extremely, was moving. I was taken by it. But then after looking, I kept saying, well, wait a minute. What's with the frogs? These kinds of questions. And you just kind of look at it. Then when I went back and started to think, well, wait a minute. Maybe, is it possible this information was in there? I didn't even entertain the notion of it. But sure enough, not only is it in there, it is the primary tools used in the construction of the book. So the way this works is, if you know the components of the days, then you will know the components of the trecenas. And if you know the decans, then you're going to spot those right away for sure. They have pretty specific thematic content. I like the very short descriptors of them, and they are very visible all throughout. The 20 days there's multiple cultural examples of the 20 days. I don't know where they originated because all these cultures have had them for so many thousands of years. They all have a very distinct cultural flavor to them, but they are consistent nonetheless. In other words, you can look at the first 20 hexagrams of the I Ching. You're going to immediately recognize those as the 20 days if you know the 20 days, if you're looking for it. The same with the decans. The decans are the I Ching hexagrams, number 21 through 56. And they match very, very well with the Hindu set of drawings. In other words, there's components in those drawings and the short descriptors that match precisely with the corresponding I Ching hexagram. So a lot of people don't know that. The last 8 I Ching hexagrams are the 8 masters. Those are the ones that are consolidated and everything derives from them. So that's how that works. And so, but I only use the 56 hexagrams, to look at this stuff. I don't look at the larger periods of time. I don't study like clumps of years. Like there's all kinds of cycles you can study. There's multiple calendars. I specifically study the days and the decans. And that's how I generally list everything. If I'm making art examples or science examples, I look at a person's, what day is it, what number of the day, and then the trecena, and that tells you the number basically, and then which decan are they born in. And then you use those 3 components to structure, precise. It's precise. So that way you get a 3-part component to observing the information as it's being put forward. That's in the combination. Now, if the 20 days are just being used by themselves, it's really easy. And the same with the decans, real easy. So that's what they used to write this book all the way through. Now, I didn't examine every book, but I'm going to give you a whole bunch of them, including the New Testament. So all the way from Genesis to Revelation, I will give you today the orders and the process that was used for writing those books. And you can just, the way this works is when you use these tools, the content is kind of set. And then the order of that content is set. In other words, like if you're writing a chapter about Ish, well, you're going to be talking about a woman or the mother of the earth. So these descriptors have very, set things. They don't, you can't just add stuff or move it around. They're very, very solid. So things stick out. And for instance, there's very specific content that isn't found anywhere else in the 20 days. And the same thing with the decan. So you just don't find it anywhere else unless it's in other sets. Now, we have lots and lots of sets. I'll put a link in the descriptor. I've got an index on all the decans from the different cultures, India, China, Japan. All the Americas had the 20 days. Egypt had the 20 days. Obviously, the Chinese had the 20 days. So a lot of people had this information. And but what you can do when you're doing something, what they did with the Bible, is you can order a story, mythology. It's like compiling a myth. You've got to keep, excuse me, with the time. These things have to be done in order. And so, but then you can just go in there and flavor the content with your culture and the names of your choice. I mean, that's how you would do it. And that's why the first part of the Bible was probably written by, one group of people. The second part can be written by another group of people. They're using the same information in the same order. They're just adding their culture and different names. Whatever you want to do, you can do whatever you want. It's like writing a story, and that's what they did. So Genesis begins, chapter 1 begins in the trecena of Ish, and this is like I said, the woman, and this is the mother of earth, and it's very specific. It is symbolized by the jaguar, it also follows the decans. Genesis follows all the decans. Chapter 1 specifically, out of every other chapter in any other book in the entire Bible, that is the only one that begins on a day that is not the beginning day of that trecena. It is the only one. Chapter 1 begins on 11 bots, and that, I think, is a very purposeful and poignant beginning to the book. And that, as soon as I saw that, I got very intrigued, because if you understand this stuff and you go looking for it in the Bible, well, you only have to look at chapter 1 in Genesis. It's got all the components. Like verse 21, shout out to whales, and there's the whale, because the whale is in Pisces, and in between the area, as you're seeing in this graph here, in Canil, that is the belly of the whale, but Bot and Pisces right there, that's the deepest water, as the symbolism goes. That's the whale. And yes, that it does also match in location in the astronomy. That's where the constellation for the whale is, Cetus. But the important thing here is you don't have to worry about any astronomy. We're not doing that. There's no astronomy. There's no astrology. None of these systems depend on any planets, okay? Now, different cultures will assign different planets to some of the decans and this and that. The days do not have planets. I don't know of any cycle that follows a 20-day cycle. So there's no planets here. this is science. It's been known for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. If you understand the days and you get knocked out and you're unconscious for an undetermined amount of time, you wake up in the middle of the jungle, but you wake up with your knowledge of the days, then you're going to be able to know what day it is in a very short period of time, just by observing what's going on. So chapter 1 is Axe and the combination of Axe and Ish. And what this is the theme is division with Axe, okay? Number 2 is Horse. That decan is, it's the calm, it's the power, it's the host. So all the host and everything gets done. All the work gets done. Number 3 is the driver, and it says at the end of the chapter, and he drove them out of the garden. There's actual language. Yes, the language is specific. Number 4 is fire. This is we're going to start talking about food and the preparation of food and things of this nature. The family, Number 5 is the goat, and this is the lineage. So in animal husbandry, this is agriculture and animal husbandry in goat. It is the prolific nature of the lineage. You want to keep track of all your lineage, and in that chapter also is Kame, which is the physical death. So that's the chapter it says, and he died, and he died, and he died 8 times. That's why it says that. The chapter of elephant, number 6, is the preparation of the ark. It's the instructions. It's the hard work, right? Elephants are used. You would definitely want some elephants around if you're going to go do some logging. If you didn't have, right? Well, we have log skidders and all kinds of crazy machines. And back in the day, people used elephants. Kind of, it was a little bit of an indication that it was placed there, that somebody had, knowledge of elephants. But also, that chapter is Kawak. On that chapter, it specifically says Kawak survives rains and floods. So that's the day, this guy, everybody else is going to die, but not this guy. I have tons of examples of that actually happening and people that actually is a real thing. It's a thing. And then the next chapter is Jewel. This is the cover, the only one who has a shield over his head. That's the only decan with a shield over its head. It's also, this is the, let's see, let me make sure, 7. 7 is when the actual reign begins. And that begins specifically on verse 11, and that is the day of Eek. And in the trecena of E, in the day of Eek is the floods. People know this. This is known. I've actually here's a crazy story. I actually was looking at this way back in the day, and I said, well, not really back in the day, a couple of years ago. I said, I bet you there's going to be a storm in that day. I actually wrote down the prediction, said the location 16 days in advance, and sent it to the National Weather Service. Nobody wrote me back, but I did it. It was an experiment. I said, let's try it. Let's see. Sure enough, there was a flood in that location on that day. And then as I was going online to that area to see, how much stuff was going on, I was reading the comments, and people are like, oh my God, this is so amazing that the movie Noah came out on that day. And I said, oh my God, look at that. The movie Noah was actually released on the day of that flood down there. It was in northern Louisiana and West Texas. And they said, and people were remarking about that. Well, as it turns out, the guy who did that movie is born on the day of Kawak. So, see, it never ends. It's constant, and all the examples are right in front of us. This is real easy stuff. Number 8 is thread. That decan is the new conversation. It actually is what we call it on the internet. It is the beginning of a new conversation. And and then number 9 is Phoenix. Well, that's the chapter where it says, okay, here we go. We got to get out there and rise from the ashes and start this whole thing all over again. Although I think they forgot the trees, but okay. Maybe the trees were able to survive. I don't know. I guess so. But it's just not, it's not a real story. Most people understand that. This isn't for people that still think these things are real stories, okay? This video is for people who are looking for more intricate, detailed knowledge of how they wrote this. Because I think to most people, it definitely seems like there's something to it and they just can't put their finger on it. Well, here it is, okay? So this is it. And I'm just going to give you all these things. If you need any of the other information, you can always look at all the other references and you can check every single one of these. Everything that I'm telling you can be checked real easy because what I'm doing is I'm giving you an index. So chapter 1 begins on 11 Bots because you have to start with the day of Bots because Bots is the first day in the time. Now, other people might keep a calendar that says, well, Emosh is the first day. Well, that's an agricultural calendar. You can keep it that way if you're interested in the agriculture, okay? But if you're talking about time itself and the pantheon and the way this all unfolds, the primordial energies, Bots is the first day, okay? And every year on the vernal equinox, the axe is the first decan, and they go the other way, and here they all are. I'm showing them to you here, and this is how the year starts, and this is how the 20-day cycle starts, and that's how it goes, okay? Now, here's how I'm going to show you how the trecenas work. So Ish is number 1. That ends on Kamei, and then the next trecena is Kej. Now, in these chapters, yes, they keep going. They don't all end on 13 days, but they stay consistent to the theme of the decan and the day or the trecena for those chapters, which trecenas are the same as a day. Okay? Hey, wait a minute. Oh, okay. Yeah, here it is. Okay, sorry. This is how the trecenas work. I don't know how that clicked twice. So the trecena, as you can see, I put the wheel in there so you get the visual, right? So if you back this wheel up, you can see number 1 lands on Kat, number 13 lands on Ajmak, and the next trecena would be Noj, okay? So if you keep rolling that wheel, the number 1 is going to land on Noj. That's how you know that that's the trecena of Noj, okay? It's just that simple. And by the way, these aren't new systems either. This shouldn't be foreign to anybody, okay? 20 is a score. They say it all through this book. So, I mean, why is that a score? What does that mean to make a score? So you have 20 fingers and toes. So we even have this old system, right, where you put 4 marks and then the 5th mark is a hash mark across there. That's 5. You get 4 of those and you got a score, okay? And this also correlates to the circle of fifths. We have 20 consonants in the English alphabet. And by the way, they follow very well with the days. All you have to do is switch the T and the P and you'd have a precise fit. Okay, so I don't know why the T and the P are where they are. Who knows? The alphabet just kind of developed. It's self-forming. And that's the whole thing about this stuff, is it is self-forming. But when you know it, you can actually purposely use these systems to, use them for knowledge. There's tons and tons of purposes. This is a natural calendar. So some things are self-formed, others are not. This calendar, the 20 days, it is self-formed, but it's formed before us. People discovered it long time ago. Over 6,000, 7,000 years. The I Ching is at least 7,000 years old. So, I don't speak to that. I just know that I study them. This is how it works. I'm just showing you how a trecena works. So if chapter 1 is Ish, the next chapter is going to be Kej. And once you start on that system, that order is set. You can't move it. It's not going to move. You can't just decide at chapter 15 that it's just going to have all this other content. You can't do that. So once you embark on this on this structure, you either do it or you don't. So if I got to, say, chapter 10 in Genesis and they say, oh, this one doesn't fit, I wouldn't have even regarded it. I would have just tossed it away and said, well, it looks like somebody tried to or something and then it didn't work out. So that's the way it would have been. But you can't follow in a story the trecenas by accident. So when you're going around the 20 days, every time it's that trecena, so if it's the trecena of Ish, and it starts with 1, that verse is the day, and then it comes back around, and number 21 will also be that day. So it just keeps going until they're done with that chapter or whatever, and then they go to the next one. It starts the very next trecena. So it doesn't matter how many lines are in the chapters. What's important is that each chapter follows the order of the trecenas. Okay? And this is how the first 4 chapters work. So chapter 1 is Ish, it ends on Kameh, and then would begin chapter 2, which is Kej, and then it would begin chapter 3 on Ashpu, and then that ends on E, and then chapter 4 would be Aj. And so in those chapters, to give you an idea of the overlay between, because you're weaving decans and trecenas and the days in these chapters, okay? So the first chapter is the chapter of Ish, and that is the creation of the earth. And it's done with an axe by dividing things, okay? So there's how you mix the trecenas with the decans. Chapter 3 is Ashpu. These are the defenders. So it says, you will not die. And that is a recurring statement that comes out of that day. I'm not going to let you die. These people actually have, these are the defenders of life, okay, in their most positive expression. So up in that area of the pantheon is born the Kevlar vest. It's the time of the gun. It's the time of a lot of martial arts, on and on and on. But when it says you will not die, well, guess what? They were right, weren't they? They didn't die. So there you go. You won. Sounds like God lied, right? I mean, that's the point of that chapter. I never saw that chapter as a punishment. It's like, actually, they were told they were going to die, but then chapter 3 comes along and says, oh, no, you're not going to die. And it's the serpent because, yes, there is a serpent energy in there. That's basically just worm form when you're into the zoological or the zoomorphic stuff. Worm form. Snakes are just worms that live on top of the ground. Then chapter 2 is Kej. That's where everything is. Kej is the location, the precise location of things, and the position. So it says where everything is, and so that's that chapter. And it's horror. So that's everything's done. And Kej on verse 21 is when they go, that's the day of Kej in the round, and it goes into a deep sleep. This is also the day known for deep sleep. That's the day most people are going to miss their alarm clock. If I could get the data of every time anybody in this country has slept through their alarm, I'll bet you it's on that day. The majority of them are going to be on that day. It just is a thing. People sleep. All the animals do it too. So it's not ours. But that's chapter 2. Where is everything? That's horse decan. So everything gets done. We use horses, and it's a lot of energy, horsepower, right? Chapter 4. After they're driven out of the garden, now we're going to talk about agriculture in Aj, is specifically a lot of times the plants. And so this is the glyph, the actual I Ching hexagram shows the plant struggling up to get out of the ground. It's the telluric forces. And so in there they talk about, well, this guy gave God some plants and he didn't like it, but the other guy gave him a sheep and he really liked that. Well, Khan, okay, Aj ends on Khan, so the product of the trecena is things that like to eat meat, okay? So that is the time. On the day of Khan, cook yourself a good steak and You'll enjoy it every time. That's a good day for people that like meat. That's the day they like it. So you smell a sweet savor when you get the meat. And there's also, it goes a little deeper too, um, into the sympathetic nervous system because, well, we'll get into that. That's a different thing. But so that's the first 4 chapters. That's how it works. That's how it's woven. This works all the way through. Not going to delineate on all these today. But that's how it works. And here we go. So this is just a download of the index. So there's Genesis, chapters 1 through 36 are the 36 decans in their proper order. The chapters 37 through 50, it starts over on 37 is Axe, and it ends on 14 decans later on Bear. And that is how Genesis runs with the decans. The trecenas begin with Ish, and they run in order 1 through 50, ending in Bots. Because if you start with Ish, the number 10 trecena would be Bots. So it ends on 50. Now, I suspect that that also follows a year, a 50-year cycle, but I don't study that, so I didn't see it. I wasn't looking for it. So I'm just breaking down the details in each chapter. Now, each chapter follows the days independently. So this isn't just about looking at a chapter and saying, oh, yeah, I see the common theme. No, every single numbered line in those chapters follows the day in order, starting with the 1 of that trecena. Okay? And the theme of the decans are just woven in there, usually at the end, sometimes right in the beginning, but a lot of times it's after verse 13 where they start getting into the decan, but not always. They mix it up. It depends. But always the days, the 20 days are adhered to with excruciating effort. There is no mistaking this. It is not an accident. Here it is. This is it. Numbers follows the 36 decans 1 through 36. It ends on number 36, and that is wagon decan. When we talk about the women and the difficulty of getting them married off, this is what wagon decan is almost always about. Exodus follows the 20 days starting with Bots, precisely twice round to make 40 chapters. This ends on Z, the 20th day. So there's, I mean, this is just in your face. Numbers in Exodus, in your face. I mean, Genesis is obviously serving as the template for the entire Bible. So every book after that copies Genesis, but it copies it in different ways. So the decans are taught in many, 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 many countries, cultures. The days, a little tougher to find, but they're out there. Like I say, the I Ching and the Mayan 20 days are the premier examples on the earth, for sure. And they're out there. Nobody's hiding those. So shame on us if nobody knows it. What are you going to do? But sometimes I'll provide just an example so that you can mark it, and then you can go and check in either direction of that marker. But I'm telling you, number 8 is Tihox, and that is the frogs. Okay? And so when you go into the Temple of Dendera, and you go down there and you see those little lightning things, and everybody talks about the light bulbs and all this, well, you see that guy, that's the frog-headed dude all the way down at the end. Well, what's he holding? He's holding 2 knives. Tihox is the day of the knife, and it is also the day of the frog. Why is it the day of the frog? Well, because Tihox is the male aspect of the mother-father or the father-mother. These are the guys who produce a lot of babies, but they don't really, sometimes they don't need a wife. And they are the progenitors. These are the progenitors. And it is also the day of electricity. So I don't know. I'm not making any guesses as to whether or not they may have found some form of electricity back then and were able to make some kind of light bulb. It's entirely possible. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, they made pyramids. I mean, I don't think a light bulb's that much harder. Glass is probably easier to make than the pyramids, pretty sure. Well, you need some sand, maybe some couple other components to get it to be cleared up, but you don't need it perfectly clear to get light out of it. If you got some way to do that, I don't know. Doesn't seem likely. It looks more like they were guessing, but either way, Tehoxis the frogs and every other chapter in that book matches precisely. In fact, chapter 12 is Eek, and that's when everybody runs, right? So that's the day you got to get the hell, get moving. Eek is the day of rapid movement. That's chapter 12. So everything can be confirmed. The first 9 chapters of Genesis, yes. Ax and Ish, again, because of the division and the creation of the earth. The horsepower and the deep sleep and the location of things is number 2. Driver and Ashpu is he drove them out of the garden, and Ashpu is you will not die, and they were right. So God lied, and so that's what happened in that chapter. Fire and yet, by the way, when you're reading these and you say the Lord, or whenever they mention that right in the first verse, what they're talking about are these components. These aren't entities. These are energies that are scientifically known. So there's just that. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a spiritual component to life in general. I'm just saying that when these chapters are written the way that they are, I think those are dubious words to be using. That's all I'm saying. Because from my perspective, if you know this stuff and you're reading this and you're looking at this, it's crazy. Again, Aj, it's fire decan, which is the first decan of Taurus, and it's Aj, and the 2 brothers is a thing. Like in Aj, I watch in the trecena of Aj, it will be brother against brother. Both FDR and Lincoln both had association. One was born on that day. The other one was born in that trecena on the other person's day. They are a exact. They are extremely similar. So, and both of those guys experienced huge amounts of death. Okay, brother against brother. That's what they call it in war, because the people you're shooting at across the trench are your brothers. Somebody has gotten you all fired up against each other. That's what's going on. Chapter 5, Goat and Kamei. Kamei is the physical death specifically. It's very specific. And this is very hard to teach people because people get freaked out about it. And they think, oh my God, it's like, no. So obviously not everybody dies on Kamei. But it is the aspect of physical death. It's a component to life, so therefore it is contained in the pantheon. And so the way they convey that, and to make sure that people know this is physical death only, they say, and he died, and he died, and he died, and he died 8 times, as they list the lineage of, goats. Elephant and Kawak. Kawak is the day that you will not drown. It is the daughters. So it starts out with the daughters. It's the daughters is a recurring theme in Kawak, as is you will not drown. Annie Edson Taylor climbed into a wooden barrel and went over Niagara Falls on her 63rd birthday on the day of Kawak, and she lived with just a bump on the head. When she came out, she did say, no one ought ever do that again. But she lived, and there's tons and tons and tons and tons of examples that I'll have in other videos. Jewel and E, this is the flood. E is the water. E is the second day in the 20 days, and it is water. It's the water that covers the earth. So when you go back to Genesis, you're talking about water every time you see the verse of E. So it's verse 2, and then it would be 22, and on and on. And it's always about water. This is the path that water makes. It's the path and the way, the journey, and so is Jewel, a little bit of the journey, but also the shelter So, and then thread, like I say, is the new conversation. Con, a lot of times, is the dry day because it can be hot on those days. Yeah, con, you can find sometimes on con, if you're, lighting fires all the time, like having campfires, you might notice if you keep the 20 days, you might notice on that day the fire burns just a little hotter. It's like, wow, this stuff is really burning today. Well, it's a thing. And then, of course, number 9 is the Phoenix and Tehox. Tehox is the caretaking of the earth. It is the national park system. The national park system is symbolized by the Flint. The people of the Flint are the people of North America, the indigenous people. They protect the water, they protect the parks, they protect the animals. In that chapter, I would remind misguided Christians. It specifically says there's a covenant with the animals and everything, because that's what Tehox is. It is the recognition. The ruler recognizes that you can't just go out and kill everything. You have to make sure you leave, you have to keep the stuff going, keep the ecosystem healthy. But they take that the wrong way and they say, oh, let's multiply. And it's like, no, that's not what that means. It's Phoenix is the rebirth, so naturally that fits in real good with the flood story. This is when they all come out, start walking around, getting stuff going again. And so that's the first 9 chapters of Genesis. Leviticus copies Genesis, but it begins 1 Ish. Like I said, there's no other book that starts on 11 bots. And no chapter or nothing. All the chapters that do the trecenas, they start right on the 1. None of them miss it that I've checked. And I didn't check all the books, but I did check all the ones I'm listing here today. Leviticus ends on Lotus Decan, which is number 27. That's finance and the female head of the bank. This is Christine Lagarde. She is born in Lotus Decan on 1 Ish. And so that's a very precise energy. She's actually born January 1st on 1 Ish. And so she is probably the number 1 feminine authority on this planet when it comes to finance. Deuteronomy follows the 20 days by chapter. Number 14 is Kat. And that's the animal. So Kat is always this day where it's like, oh, what do we eat? What do we got to eat today? And you want some meat. And the next day is Khan when they cook the steak. But 14 is Kat. And this is a day that I always tell people, be careful on that day. The animals can get very defensive or aggressive. Be careful with the animals on that day because you might get surprised. But so that lists the animals. And so line number 4 in number 14, just so you can check, so you can confirm it, right there on that day, we're talking about the 4-leggeds, and that's exactly what Kej is. It's the 4-legged, it's like the deer is the symbol for that day, but it's also any of the 4-legged large mammals, like horses, deer, not so much pigs, but definitely the deer, right, and the antelopes, these kinds of things. Those are all Kej. And that's the end of the Pentateuch. Joshua still keeps going, follows the decans. I'll leave these up briefly. So hopefully by now you got the idea. You can just go through and pause this video. I'm putting it up so that the information's out there. I really want to get this monkey off my back. I'm tired of it. I don't want to look at it anymore. These books are disturbing. I mean, I don't have any problem with acculturation of the knowledge. It's if you hide it and say it's something that it's not, or you do something with it, that becomes a problem, okay? But just acculturating it, no, it's not a problem. But the way it was acculturated here, I don't know if I'd be too proud of that. It's like really angry. Like all these books are like really angry. And it's just, man, really? So yeah, 1 Samuel, so Emosh, this is the line where the guy and his sons and all the guys with him are all killed. They're all gone now. This whole thing is gone, right? And that's what emosh is in the I Ching. It is the clump of grass and all the roots. Is you pick it all up and you move it. So in Exodus, it would be chapter 11, is when you pick up the clump of grass and all the roots. And then the next day is Eek, and you move it all, okay? So this is the flow of the days in Exodus. Very easy to follow if you understand the days. Use the I Ching. There's a lot of I Ching, specifically I Ching knowledge all through the Bible, by the way. The best one I always like to point out is check out I Ching hexagram number 5, and I use the leg translation. Compare it to chapter 18 of Genesis, because that is the trecena of Zakin, and that is the correlate for I Ching hexagram number 5 in the order of the trecenas, and they are a match. It is verbatim, okay? Yep, all these guys follow it too. Isaiah wasn't horrible. I don't know. I mean, there's some good storylines, but it wasn't horrible. They definitely knew what they were doing in Isaiah, I think, because a lot of these books, you can tell they're written by different people because they display various levels of knowledge, right? You can tell when somebody's just copying stuff, or they're using it out of context, right? Like they don't understand it. But generally, everybody stayed pretty much right on task. Isaiah, I would say that it displayed a rather more decent knowledge of the days than maybe some of the others, but not impressively. Ezekiel, definitely, the wheels within the wheels are exactly the days. There's your first clue, because that's how all the calendars are kept. They're all kept in a circular format. Not the I Ching, but it can be. You can just arrange it that way. That's not the way they wrote it down. That's not the, what they got is on a stone. So, but I'm sure they knew it was kept in a circular form. So all the calendars kept in a circular form. Daniel, it's a fun story. It's not bad. I mean, it's okay. It's not great. And that's it for the Old Testament. Those are all the books I looked at. And like I say, if you're interested in studying, you can go back to this at any time. This is now a permanent online reference. I will leave this video up. I'm not going to take it down. I may publish it in other places with more commentary. I doubt it. It's really boring. I'm tired of this. It took a lot of work to go and correlate all these. It doesn't take long for each chapter. Like, if you get to Daniel, right? If I'm correlating, I go and I'm like, okay, I'm waiting to find one that doesn't, because I'm thinking, well, there's got to be a break somewhere, right? Doesn't anybody just go off? There's no rogue entries anywhere? No. This, well, like religion, okay? They follow it pretty religiously. So, but you can definitely see where it definitely tails off, starting with Joshua. The knowledge tails way off. Numbers starts out pretty decent as far as decan stories go, and then it just completely goes south. So just way too much dogma. And then of course the anger starts, and then you get to these, and they're okay. They're not horrible, but they definitely don't seem to be accumulating additional clarity. They seem to be like learning these things in a very regimented way that's not fluid. So they repeat this process over and over and over and over. A lot of times they'll do different orders, which, at least that shows some initiative, but it's again, there's a lot of cultures in this knowledge. So what's being used in the Old Testament is not one culture's knowledge base of the 20 days. They are multiple cultures because that's the cultural references for each culture. Like say the Maya, easy to see. The I Ching, very easy to see. The Hindu, very easy to see because it's verbatim. So these things are verbatim and you can see them. The New Testament, I looked at it and I said, this is evidence of a crime. Now, why would I say that about this, but not the Old Testament? Well, simply for the very simple method that, or the simple fact that any time I've listened, at least to people that I've listened to, they don't claim that the Jews, and my grandmother was Jewish. I don't know. That doesn't count, but at least some people think it does. Some other, it doesn't matter. I don't follow any group. I'm not in any group. I don't do any of this stuff. I don't like church. I broke out of church long when I was 5 years old. Took the money, went bought some candy. But this is evidence of a crime because they took an army and they took these stories and they put them together in the way that I'm showing you right here. And underneath each of these 4 books, I'm showing you how these books are structured using this information. And then underneath it, I am giving you my professional opinion of what the intention was by looking at how they did it. So in other words, if you're beginning with Keneal, that is the adjacent day to goat decan. So you're establishing lineage and you're establishing right off the bat, I know that you have this knowledge, okay? So right off the bat, you're telling me that we're going to start this on Keneal and we're going to establish lineage. And I said, oh, wow, okay. So it's not real hard. If you study the stuff that I study, it's not hard. These books were correlated in like maybe 20 minutes a piece. But then, you know, I spend days and days and, you know, back and forth. I don't stay on it, but I've got, you know, many hours looking at them just to check, just to make sure. I don't want to come on and say something that I don't know. I'm telling you, these are exact, they are precise, they are very poorly done. They are done with just, not just enough to show me that they had the knowledge. They're done with using the knowledge in a very poor fashion. They don't show a deep understanding of what they're, of the information itself, of the days themselves. It shows a deep understanding of the knowledge of them, but it doesn't show that they have a deep knowledge of the days themselves. Like, what is this? How, you know, how do you know? And all this. They are copying this stuff. So Mark follows the days by chapter, beginning with Eek. This establishes the church authority. The church is Eek. Can get into all kinds of things about that, but that's what that is. Luke follows the trecenas by chapter, beginning with Kej. This is the compels belief and the gathers unto them. So Kej is the position, and Kej is also a, let's call it a magnetic energy. So a lot of times when you see chapters of Kej all throughout, they have both Old and New Testament. They use that basic understanding that the people of Kej are good at gathering others to them, okay? So this is the, a lot of it is going out and getting the adherents, okay? This is how you get everybody to believe you. That's what Kej is. And there was actually, I think it was in Exodus, might have been in Numbers, but there's one chapter of Kej where it goes and right on 13 Kawak, and it says, and the people believed. And I said, wow, okay, so it's pretty clear they have an understanding that this is what this energy does, and they're using it for that. John follows the 20 days by chapter, beginning with bots, and that's why it starts out with in the beginning was the word, because that is that's like a generic bots thing. But this, yes, John ties it together with the Old Testament. It's the old hitch our wagon to theirs kind of deal. Acts is, I thought that was a profoundly ironic name, because acts, how you act really has more to do with what these people are always professing than anything else. I think actions speak louder than words. And I think that as I look at, and I do follow the activity of the church pretty closely, at least for the last 10 years or so. Before that, I just thought all those people were crazy. The first time when I was real little, I looked up and I saw the dude hanging on the wall, nailed to the cross, and there's blood and there's all this stuff. Now, I'm a little kid. And I remember this because my mother was a Sunday school teacher. She had a hell of a time trying to keep us all wanting to go. None of us wanted to go. It was horrifying. And I said, what is with the deal with that? She goes, that's God. And I said, bullshit. I don't think so, man. That doesn't look good at all. That stuff looks nasty. And so the activities of the church have been pretty nasty by any, even, right, even if you're a friendly assessment. I think you have to admit this is horrifying. And when you know the decans, you know the guys who come in the black robes into the temples are not friend. Every culture on the planet knew this. Every culture on the planet that has the days knows Eek is the 12th day. This is the wind. It is the, this can bring a nastiness. The Maya put it very politely. They simply say, because they're very polite, by the way. And they say, oh, this is a necessary energy. In other words, you can't get around it. And wind is necessary, but sometimes it blows a little hard, and the people that connect themselves to this energy are very nasty. And it even says they have cruel instruments in their habitations. What an interesting statement. And I saw that, and it was like right on Eek. And I said, oh, and if you go through and use this index and just gather every line of all the books and all the chapters that are Eek, and you tell me what you see. Kamei is better, and that's the day of physical death, because Kamei is actually the messengers. And in the Maya, Quiche Maya, it specifically says these are messengers to humanity, and they sometimes are known to go quickly to their deaths after they complete their message. So I said, oh. And then at one point, I also learned that people born in the trecena of Eek would be born on the day, or if they're born on Kamei, the day of Kamei, in the trecena of Eek, your day would be 5 Eek, or 5 Kamei, sorry. So in the trecena of Eek, 5 days into it, you land on the day of Kamei. That would be known as 5 Kamei. And the people born on 5 Kamei, one of which I do know personally, they are extremely intuitive and in touch with, let's just call it, invisible beings. And they can get messages. And these people are very spiritually tuned in. And Falcon, of course, is the decan of the archetype of the, this is Gandhi. It's so many people. I've got a video of Falcon on my channel, and you can go look at it, all the examples, all the wonderful, amazing spiritual people that are born in that decan. The whole fat list of them. And Falcon wants the spirit to fly. It's the clay pot. So when you're reading Job, I didn't do Job here, but Job, because Job is really about the forewarning decans, and that's what that is. So there it is. And so that's the clay pot, and that's the one Job grabs that pot shard and he's scrubbing his boils off, because people born with a heavy Saturn influence, what they call Saturn influence, it doesn't matter. You don't have to believe in the planet or whatever. Again, I use these as common reference, but Falcon decan is a decan where you can have skin issues. So it's known, and that's the part in Job. Job is Falcon decan, so he has this rise and fall, and it's really a story about the Saturn return as much as anything else. That's an interesting cycle that people could check out. But that is, when you get to Revelation and you see everything that they did, right? And you can look at the New Testament, and you can look at everything they're doing there, and you look at them, going, wow, man, these guys, man, Trump don't have anything on these guys. These guys are, I mean, Bernie Madoff would be proud, right? So this revelation is so blatantly over the top, the use of fear and trickery to gain adherence, that I consider it evidence of a crime, because nobody conducting a spiritual activity would have published that book at the end. That is not there for spiritual activity. That is there to scare the hell out of people to keep them around. That's what that is. So I consider that evidence of a crime, because they've lied about it. Now, that in and of itself, I don't consider lying a crime. But when you take money, as soon as you take money, yeah, now you're committing fraud, aren't you? You can't take any money. And boy, they take it. They take a lot of it. They take the people's money. They're getting tax money. That's a crime. So the sum of the archetype of Jesus, I can't speak to the story. I don't care. I think everybody's right. That's the way I look at that. You know, this guy will say, oh, it's Josephus. Oh, no, it's this guy. And oh, they borrowed it from the Egyptians. I think they're all right. I think they're all correct. But what I'm telling you here is that the archetype that they're zeroing in on, and this is why nobody seems to be able to nail it down, because they don't understand the days and the decans. And if you did, and you understand that, and then you read those books with that understanding, you're going to see this stuff and it jumps right out at you. So there's definitely the sum of the archetype is 5 Kame, trecena of Eek, decan of Falcon. That's why he's a messenger that died on the cross. And he has a lot of similarities with the archetype of Horus. So that's what that all is. Yep. It could be Gandhi. You could call that dude Gandhi. You could call him Jesse Jackson, I think is another one. I think Desmond Tutu in the same decan. Who's another one? Thich Nhat Hanh, same decan. Man, so many. John Lennon, same decan. You know, all these guys. And here's the hexagram in the I Ching that describes the day of Eek. And it says, because this is important, because it's not, see, if the guy had died, you could kill a guy. If you're writing a story, you can kill a guy a lot of different ways. But killing a guy on that thing, that's a specific thing. So in the fifth, this describes what they're doing. Okay, so this, I'm telling you, the whole church is based on this. The story that they're hitched their wagon to hitch it to the other wagon, is a guy who brings the distress an obstruction to a close. And this is what they needed. They needed closure, right? They needed to wrap this up. We've got to make sure we've only got one religion here, and we've got to go out and enforce this. And it's just amazing what they've done with this. The great man and fortunate, but let him say, we may perish, so shall the state of things become firm, as if bound to a clump of bushy mulberry trees. Down in the notes, it gives a more clarified interpretation of that same line, and you can go look at hexagram number 12 and read the whole thing. And let him say, I die, I die. I die, I. It's I die, I. So to a bushy clump his fortune he shall tie. And that's exactly what happened. And so that's the archetype. Those are the books. Everybody can check it. It is evidence of a crime. It is crimes against humanity, because when the Catholics got to Guatemala, they discovered that these people had the 20 days, and they didn't just have them. They had integrated the 20 days into their entire culture. Everybody there knew their day. The entire thing was peaceful and wonderful. These people had amazing knowledge. So any stories you hear about savages and all this, not in the Maya of the Highlands, not in Tikal, not in those places. Those places, these people are amazing. Anybody can go there and visit. You tell me what you think. So, but the Catholics said, oh, wait a minute. When they found out these guys had the 20 days, they didn't destroy all that stuff because they thought they were doing what was spiritually correct. They destroyed it because their secret was in trouble. Their secret could not survive that. It freaked them out. And they said, oh no, we're conquering. They weren't there to bring enlightenment. These are not the activities of anybody enlightening. So even today, the papal bulls are used in taking indigenous land away from them in the state of New York as recently as 2005. The papal bull was cited in our Supreme Court. Just so you know, anybody can go look it up. Inter cetera and the like. There's a few others, but they cited it in Supreme Court. And who cited it? Who was the author of that brief or that decision? It was a decision. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So you got to understand something. These two books are hooked together. These two people work together. These are entities. I have no problem with any people. I have problems with authorities that are in charge of these things. Now, there are a lot of people that are Jewish scholars and things of this nature. They are way more honest than the Catholics. They will tell you point blank, as like, that's not our history. I don't know where that book came from. That's exactly what they say. You can go look at them. Joel Baden, Eileen Pagels, the like. There's others in Tel Aviv University say the same thing. So this is ridiculous, and it needs to end, because what you have in front of you now is evidence of a crime. They had the same information that the Maya had, and they kept trying to steal that stone, didn't they? They kept taking that stone, and they tried, but see, the Maya, these are spiritual people. They can find things, just the way that, there's some guy out there. There's lots of people that can find things. They can find things. And they kept finding that stone. And the last place they buried it was in the church wall. And they busted into that church and dug it out of the wall. Said, give us back our stone. So, evidence of a crime. Again, no problem with the people. I have been around a lot of Catholics. I've been around a lot of people. And people are all the same. But the authorities of these outfits, this is where the problem is. They need to come clean. They need to get honest. And we need to do better. as a species, because this is fraud. Why not just teach the days if they know them, and they clearly know them? This isn't a case where it's like, well, we don't know anything about that. That's just a coincidence. Yeah, coincidence. Okay. All the way through the entire book, it's just a coincidence. I think not. Bullshit. That's all I got for today. I'm glad to be done with it.